So, Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving Day is our national holiday in the United States. And Thanksgiving for 2020 is occurring Thursday, November 26th, coming up. The modern Thanksgiving holiday is marked with parades and fairs and family gatherings. It is a major part of most family traditions to be together on this day and share a large meal. It wasn't until 1862 where in the midst of the Civil War that President Abraham Lincoln proclaimed a national Thanksgiving Day uh, to be held each November. We are all familiar with the traditional origins of Thanksgiving. Uh, as they go in 1621, the Plymouth colonists and the Wampanoag Native Americans shared an autumn harvest feast. That was acknowledged today as one of the first Thanksgiving celebrations in the colonies. But today we are also very aware that some Native Americans and others take issue with how the Thanksgiving story is presented to the American public, especially to school children. In their view, the traditional narrative prints a deceptively sunny portrait of the relations between the pilgrims and the native people, masking the long and bloody history of conflict. Since 1970, protesters have been gathering on the day designated as Thanksgiving at the top of Coles Hill, which overlooks Plymouth Rock, to commemorate a National Day of Mourning. Similar events are held in other parts of the country. So, what does Thanksgiving mean to you? Specifically, what traditions do you have surrounding this holiday? It seems to have been evolving, and especially this particular year, it's going to be different.
Well, one tradition I always have is in Minnesota, it used to be that at 12 o'clock on Thanksgiving, they would play the Arlo Guthrie Alice's Restaurant song. And my whole family, we would all stop and we would listen to it growing up. And nowadays, I make a point of going to YouTube on that day and finding that song and listening to it because it's a Thanksgiving tradition from growing up.
It's good to share our traditions. They're the precursors to the same support that Ritual has. Oh yes, Artemis.
My family is like the Griswolds. So we don't do the typical Thanksgiving because we all fight too much. Sad. So my sister and I started a tradition years ago of going to a theme park the day before Thanksgiving, like Six Flags, or I'm from Texas, so we had Six Flags over Texas. And I know we have SeaWorld here and things like that. And just celebrating life. And then the next day we would go and try to work in a soup kitchen somewhere and feed the homeless.
Excellent.
So,
That's very nice.
Rather than fighting with family, I just prefer to do something like that and help somebody else somehow. And we actually got a few of our coworkers involved doing that too, because they didn't want to fight with their families either. So that's ours, what we do. My husband and I actually do that now too.
I have been having Thanksgiving tradition for 49 years now. Since 1971, I've been making Thanksgiving dinner, and for the most part, the invited guests were people who had no place else to go. With the exception of 3 years, that's what I've been doing. And this year, my sister's not going to be here. So I think we'll do duck instead.
Thank
Let's
you.
hear you.
Having worked the last 30-something years in retail, holidays are rough, and we don't get the same time off that people usually do. And it became very difficult for us to go to Carl's parents' house for Thanksgiving and then turn around and go again for Christmas. So we made up our own holiday in the middle called Thankmas, where we would go and we'd have the traditional Thanksgiving dinner, but we'd exchange gifts. And it got crazier and crazier every year. We crowned the Thankmas king or queen or whatever.
A perfect compromise.
So it was really nice on a weekend that we could get the time off between the two holidays and just made it our own. And there's nothing wrong with that. You should just make these, don't be a slave to convention. If it's hard, just make something up.
Yeah. So just what Alba was saying about make your own traditions sometimes remind me of one of the most fun Thanksgivings I ever had was the one at the hostel in Puerto Rico when I went over to the grocery store and I saw what claimed to be sourdough, but it was actually jamon. And I had carried it back to the hostel and I had prepared this whole, what I was thinking was going to be a turkey for a couple of Chinese travelers and a Belgian who were very curious about American Thanksgiving, and I was going to give it to them, complete with potatoes, turkey, corn, which is what I could find at the grocery store. Instead, we ended up having ham, potatoes, and corn. Because somebody mislabeled the sourdough and the jamon at the grocery store in Puerto Rico.
We usually go down to my aunt's house for Thanksgiving and Christmas, but due to COVID-19, we can't do that this year. And we usually have turkey, ham. One year we had pulled pork.
For my tradition, it's like normal, like Thanksgiving food, but we go to my great-grandmother's house with my great-grandfather. And since they're German and Philippine, my great-grandfather's Philippine and my great-grandmother is German. So we have normal Thanksgiving food, but we also could put in the Philippine and the German mixed all into it. So it's pretty, like, has that exotic kind of traditional kind of thing to it. It's so delicious.
Oh, great.
Oh, we are the destination in our neighborhood for Thanksgiving. We usually plan for about 15. We've gone to close to 30, but it's great because we have what we call the mine, yours, and ours family, and doesn't matter who shows up, plus all the strays in the neighborhood. Any stray that doesn't have a place to go is always welcome at our table. So, and we do all the traditional stuff. We do the turkey, but we do the ham. And we change it up. We do a lot of Southern foods, and then I'm not Southern, so I do a lot of, PNW foods, and there's usually octopus involved. There's a lot of, absolutely. It's a lot of different things involved. So it's definitely about blending.
Yeah.
And for us, that's what this holiday is about. It's about blending and putting the families together so that everybody has something that has a taste of comfort, but is also something a little new.
Since I'm part of two large families, we actually surprisingly had like 3 Thanksgivings for me and my brother, we would have 3 Thanksgivings. One with our aunt and uncle, which are Jewish. They usually have a traditional Thanksgiving, and he cooks one of the best turkeys ever. Then we go to our other aunt or uncle on my mother's side, which is usually the whole big that side of the family Thanksgiving, and they have most of the time traditional, but sometimes it's non-traditional, like steak and lobster at one point. It was interesting.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then the third Thanksgiving is the immediate family with mom, stepdad, sisters, husbands, brother, his girlfriend, and so yeah, that's basically our tradition because the big family Thanksgivings are Thursday, and the immediate family Thanksgiving is Fridays for us, and it's been basically a tradition for the last 4 or 5 years now.
Well, I have heard a lot of talk about traditions involving food and involving family and mixing families and a lot of togetherness. So I'm going to go with that as a general thing we're going to keep in mind. And I'm going to now discuss some of the pagan origins of Thanksgiving and how they're all connected. Let's talk about the pagan origins of this holiday. Although the American concept of Thanksgiving developed in the colonies of New England, its root can be traced back to the other side of the Atlantic. Both the separatists who came over in the Mayflower and the Puritans who arrived soon after came with a lot of traditional, a lot of tradition of provincial holidays, days of feasting during difficult or pivotal moments, and days of feasting that celebrates the thanks to God for times of plenty. As an annual celebration of the harvest and its bounty, moreover, Thanksgiving falls under a category of festivals that span cultures, um, continents, and millennia. In ancient times, Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans feasted and paid tribute to their gods after the fall harvest. Thanksgiving also bears a resemblance to the ancient Jewish harvest festival of Sukkot. Finally, historians have noted that Native Americans had a rich tradition of commemorating the fall harvest with feasting and merriment long before any of the Europeans got there. Thanksgiving can be seen as a combination of the 3 harvest festivals in the traditional Wiccan holiday. First, there's Lammas or Lugnasa, traditionally around August 1st. The name Lammas um, contract contracts. It breaks up into loaf mass, which implies it is an um, agrarian-based festival and feast of Thanksgiving for the grain and bread, which symbolizes the first fruits of the harvest. So as August comes around, we start harvesting. Now, in a agrarian society, harvest isn't all at once. Many different things grow at different times, and that leads us to um, yeah, that leads us to the autumnal equinox, modernly known as Mabon. So the holiday of the autumnal equinox or sometimes called harvest home or Mabon. It's a modern pagan ritual of thanksgiving for the fruits of the earth and the recognition of the need to share them to secure the blessings of the goddess and the gods during the coming winter months. So we're not just talking about our harvest, we're also talking about sharing it and helping each other. And then the name Mabon was coined in 1970. That's why I said it was a more recent name, but it reflects Mabon or the Modron, which is a character in Welsh myth. And the third harvest festival is Samhain. So Samhain is considered by some to be the time to celebrate the lives of those who have come, who have passed on, and is often involved paying respect to the ancestors, to other family members, to the elders, and to the elders of the faith, friends, pets, all of the community that we have built. It corresponds to death, reflects the fact that at this point the fields are bare, harvest is complete. It is, of course, the one that corresponds with the modern observation of Halloween and the Day of the Dead. In some ritual, the spirits of the departed are invited to attend a feast. So now that we are in mid-November, this would mark the completion of the harvest, and we would now have a real measure of what we have accumulated for the winter. So a feast at this time could mark the end of autumn and the last celebration of the life and light before the winter snows. In the Norse or Germanic holidays, they often mark a ancestor's bloat, which is celebrated, which celebrates one's own ancestors and our common ancestors, and that is marked on November 11th. So as we see, there's many different traditions, and all of them have this overlapping theme. So it makes sense as people modernize, they simplify, but they still keep all of that together. And so that's my explanation of Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
At this point, we've seen the traditions here in the holiday that's celebrated around this time, not just Thanksgiving, but all of our pagan holidays. What do you celebrate? What do you each take to as your personal worship? And have I missed any? And what traditions do you have surrounding this time? We talked about the traditions for Thanksgiving specifically, but what ties in that you think should be celebrated all together?
Not a problem. So, for me personally, as a British traditional practitioner, Mabon for me is Thanksgiving. So that's the time when you should have absolutely everything that you want to enjoy for the next 6 months at your table. So it's kind of a culmination of what you've done, the things you've harvested, whether it's friends, family, foodstuffs. It's not always just about food, but that is a very common way to share these things and to bring people together, because a lot of people will sit down together for a meal. It takes a community to make a big meal. It really does. So at that point, that's what that is for me. When it comes to the Samhain celebration, it's a little bit different because those are, again, it still takes a community, but that is the time to celebrate the things that your past loved ones enjoyed. So you're making dishes of remembrance instead. So it kind of falls for me, Thanksgiving is a little early. So this Thanksgiving is more of the traditional American for me. But to bring it all together, you still bring those harvest items to the table because there are always those late harvest items, those squashes, those root vegetables, those things like that. But it is about just the gathering of family. So frankly, I get to enjoy two of them, the one earlier in Mavin and then the one later with the American Thanksgiving. So that's how I tie them together.
Yeah. So for me, I still follow the tradition I learned about and started when I was living in Minnesota, where at this time of year, you really don't see much of the sun. It rises about, 7, 8 in the morning, and it sets by about 4:30 at night. So if you're working a typical job or you're in school, you just don't see the sun. So this was always taught to me as, so like I know there's some people say the witch's new year is at Samhain. I actually always learned it was celebrated the witch's new year at Yule, but the last day of the old year is at Samhain. And the 6-week period between them is known as the dead time, or the time between the years. It's equivalent in the lunar cycle would be the new moon, or the very, very end of the moon cycle before the next moon begins. Thanksgiving is basically just the secular holiday. You celebrate that because at this time of year, they're really, your ancestors and the darkness of the world are really close with you. So you just cling to your family and the people you care about very closely. And that's why at Yule, you have the Mare Lu, which is sort of like the goodbye party where they come in one last time, you all have a good get together, you get drunk, and then they go away till next Samhain.
I think we've put it all together.
Mhm.
Thank you all.